Peace be upon you, friends. With you is your friend Darum. I ask you to support the channel by subscribing, liking, and posting motivating comments and an enjoyable viewing experience for you. So I shouted at Jasai or Harishat Asdak and said to him, Jatar, confirm your news and information once again before you bother me like this. Jisar got very angry and started cursing at Rami. Then he asked for permission to go out, so I gave him permission and he went out. Ajun stayed with me and said, while looking at me with malice, Jasar will kill Rama. I told her, I don't think so. She said, you don't know Jasar. I told her, what he does is his responsibility, not mine. In fact, after less than an hour, Jasar asked for permission to enter after Junad had left, so I allowed him to enter. He entered, bearing traces of a fight and holding Rami's head in his hand, and said, I took revenge on you from the traitor, sir. So I said to him calmly, who ordered you to do that, Jasar? After he got down on his knee and lowered his eyes to the ground, he said, I did it for you, sir, because he lied to us and deluded us into a danger that did not exist. I said to him, this was your decision, so do not attach it to me, Jasar. He said, yes, sir. Jasar left after I gave him permission, and I felt relieved that the problem of Rami was gone. But the problem of Dashar and those with him was still there and waiting to be solved. The next morning, I went with Yund to the same place and ordered her to wait far away as happened yesterday. I headed to the foot of the mountain to find that the five had brought the two of them in chains. It did not take long to convince them to recite the pledge of loyalty to me, as they realized that their hypocrisy had been exposed. I now control 7 of the 10 believers, and that was not just what I controlled. They are leaders in their organization, and each one of them controls 100 companions under his command. And therefore I was controlling 700 of their army, consisting of 1,000 believers. I gave them an order to leave, and they promised to listen, obey, and defend me at any time. I returned to Yund after the 7 peers had left, but this time she asked me after I asked for permission to ask and said, why are we back to the same place again? So I said to her, do you promise to listen and obey me, Yund? She said, I am your servant, sir. So I said to her, no, Yund. Jasar is bound by a covenant that he cannot escape from, but you are not bound to anything with me, and your attempt to make me believe that you are my servant will not deceive me, because Jasar's army follows him, so he follows me, but you are Jasar's sister and a lady in your tribe. Therefore, you are not bound to obey me without a covenant. Yund remained silent after these words, and signs of concern appeared on her face because her matter had been exposed. At the same time, I felt that I had rushed into this confrontation because I was alone with her in that secluded place far from the cave, and she could easily kill me and no one would know about it. Iwalo! When I realized the danger I had put myself in, I quickly remedied the matter and said to her, I know why, Yund. You stay by my side and serve me. She said, why? I told her, because you have feelings for me and are unconditionally attracted to me. She smiled and said, you are more malicious than any devil blogger. So I smiled back at her and opened my arms in an invitation from me to hug her, hoping that her heart would be inclined and she would forget her question. And indeed, this is what happened. And after that, we returned to the cave and I asked her not to tell Jasar what happened between us. So she smiled and said, I won't, blogger. Then she left smiling without asking permission. After the pledge of loyalty given to me by the 7 peers, I controlled most of the pawns. But the presence of Jund without a pledge of loyalty was a danger to me, as well as Doshar. And the two who were still loyal to him was the second danger that I had to think about, so I had to think of a plan. Knew to get rid of them all at once. The decision to leave the Atlas Mountains and go to another place was the best choice for me at that time. The danger of the 10 believers had eased after 7 of them had loyal to me, so I summoned Jasser and said to him, I want you, Jasser, to take me to another place. I am tired of this place, especially since it is no longer there, a safe place, with a presence of 10 believers. He said, but sir, this is the safest place for you. I said to him, behave, I will not stay here after today. He said, give me sunrise and sunset, sir. I said to him, you have that, but don't add anything more to them. He said, Jasser left, and I was left alone waiting for Tsuri, period requested by Jasser to expire. While I was waiting, Hund entered Ali in the evening and again did not ask for permission. I realized that what had happened at the foot of the mountain had demolished some barriers between us, and this thing was not in my interest at all. Shund approached me, and when she approached, I raised my hand in her face and said, where are you going, soldier? She said in a soft voice, what's wrong with you, blogger? So I shouted at her and said, address me by the title I deserve. She screamed and said, okay, Master of the 7. I remained silent in shock and said, what 7? She said sarcastically, don't be evasive. I saw you recruiting 5 fellow believers and then 2 more the next day, I said to her. But I ordered you to stay where you are. She laughed and said, as you said, I am not your slave like Jasser for you to order me to do. I am free to do what I do. It was clear that at that moment I had fallen and was certain that my end was near and that it would be at the hands of a killer, Jen. I stopped talking and began to bear witness because I was convinced at the time that I was lost. I had deluded her into loving me, and this is something that is unforgivable among female demons, especially the masters. I closed my eyes, waiting for the feeling of my head being separated from my body. My head was not separated from my body, and my life did not end that day. But I heard Jun's voice saying, don't be afraid, blogger, I won't kill you now. I opened my eyes to find her sitting on Yassar's stone throne, examining it with her long fingers, looking at him eagerly and saying, this throne is more important than you, and whoever killed you now. I said to her, even you want this throne. She screamed at me and said, who does not want this throne? I told her, I don't want it. She said while smiling sarcastically, who are you to dream of such a throne? You have taken more than your sees. You are just a lowly bastard who ruled the underworld, and it is time for you to know your position. So I said to her, what do you want from me, Yund, now? She said, Jasser will not allow anyone to kill you, and if I kill you, I will be the first to suspect him, and I do not need this matter. I said to her sarcastically, do you want me to kill myself? She said, no, I want you to free Jasser from his enslavement to you, and this will be enough to put your life in danger without my direct intervention. I said to her, why are you doing that? She said, Jasser remains my brother. No matter what he does, but you are just a human intruder, so I said to her, and if I don't do it, Yund? She said, don't test me, blogger. There are many ways to kill you, but I want to free my brother before her. I was silent for a while and thought, so then I said to her, I will not free Jasser, O soldier. Do whatever you want, and remember that if you kill me, Jasser may take revenge on you, even if he does not. There are 7 fellow believers who made a pledge of loyalty and protection to me, and you saw that yourself, and they may make your life hell. the soldiers went berserk and attacked me and stuck their claws into my chest and screamed at me and said, "Don't mess with me, you lowly bastard! Free my brother now!" I told her, "Kill me and he will be free." She threw me on the ground forcefully and said, "I will give you until the morning to think, and when I return, you will free my brother, or I will free your soul from your body." Yund said these words and left the mulberry leaf that fell in the middle of the triangle. I spent quite a bit of time on the floor of the cave, staring at its cracked ceiling and the wounds on my shoulders from the bleeding claws of a soldier. At sunset, Jassar entered upon me after asking permission and said, "I have arranged a safe place for you, sir." So I said to him while I was trying to stand and hide the wounds caused by Yund on my chest and shoulders, "Where is this place, Jassar?" He said, "In the triangle of devils at sea." I said to him, "But this place is very dangerous, Jassar." He said, "Don't worry, sir. I have arranged for you to stay on an island that will not arrive. There are no humans or jinn to it." I said to him, "What about the devils?" He said, "Even the most powerful devils." So I said to him, "Take me there immediately, Jassar. I could not stand to stay here any longer, but before you take me there, I do not want anyone to know my whereabouts, especially Yund. Do you understand, Jassar?" He said, "Soldiers." "And why, sir?" I said to him, "Execute without discussion, Jassar." He said, "Your command." Jassar took me to the Devil's Triangle and landed me on a large island. It was night, the moon was full, and the sea was very rough. Jassar told me before he left that the place was safe, but that I must not leave the coast or enter the center of the island, and that he would send me enough food and drink every day. I told him to leave, and he left. I was tired from my encounter with Yund and the trip to the island, so I fell asleep quickly and slept on the beach until morning. Days passed while I was on that island, not entering its midst, as Jassar warned me, and a table of food would arrive every day at dawn with the messenger, Yaklab. I had been on that island for more than a month, and at dawn one day he came to me, as was his custom, with the dining table. Before he was about to leave, I asked him about the conditions of the tribe, and he said, "The situation is stable, and the attacks of the 10 believers have become less than before. There are some blogs that mention that a dispute broke out between the 10 leaders, and my master, Jassar, is happy about that." He told him, "What about Jand?" He said, "As it is, sir, nothing new has happened. Do you permit me to leave?" So I allowed him to leave, and he left. After a week had passed since my conversation with Yaklab, boredom began to invade my mind and distract me, so I decided to talk to Yaklib on his next visit and order him to tell Jassar that I wanted to see him, because I wanted him to take me to a better place. I waited for it to turn around at its usual time, which was at sunrise, but it did not come. One day passed and he did not appear. Turns over. A hunger began to ravage my body, and thirst had reached the maximum I could bear. There was only salt water around me, so my strength collapsed on the ground, and I fell into a deep sleep. I woke up to a sound that wakes me up in the evening, so I opened my eyes to find Yakleb lying in front of me, his body covered in bleeding wounds, and he was searching for his breath. So I tried to wake him up, but he only said a few words before he took his last breath. He said, "My master, Jassar, died, and Jund took the throne from him." I tried to wake him up, but he died, and his body disappeared in front of me. I was exhausted from hunger and thirst. I could not comprehend his words. I thought I was in a dream, so I staggered towards the center of the island as a last attempt to search for food, ignoring Jassar's warning because I was about to die anyway. I entered among the trees of the island and started walking without a specific destination until I fell to the ground from exhaustion and fell into a deep sleep again. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but I woke up to the sound of thunder and heavy rain falling on me. I started drinking the water, collected in the corners of the leaves of the large trees that filled that forest until I quenched my thirst. The rain stopped shortly after I woke up, and I regained some of my health after drinking water turbid with mud and sand. I wandered into that forest, hoping to find something edible. I walked a long distance until the trees began to gradually decrease until I reached a green area devoid of trees, in the middle of which was what looked like a house made of stones. I headed to that house solely because I was still exhausted from hunger and walking. When I reached the stone house, I did not see a window or a door. It was more like a hole or a well covered with stones. The hole was a group of lined-up stones that led down into the ground like a basement. I hesitated to go down, but in a moment of desperation, I went down and continued down what was estimated to be 3 floors down. The darkness was getting darker as I went down until I reached the end and I could not see anything, so I decided to go back up. Then I heard a voice coming from behind me, saying quietly, "Where are you going, son of Adam?" So I stopped where I was and did not look back, and the voice said to me, "Sit down, I want to talk to you." So I sat on the cold stone threshold of the stairs and hugged myself out of fear and remained silent. The voice said, "Do not be afraid, son of Adam. I only want some of your time. I have been monitoring your life for a while, and the time has come for us to meet and talk." "Oh, sir." I remained silent and did not respond to him. I was looking closely at the darkness from which the voice was coming, but I could not see anything. The owner of the voice continued speaking and said, "My children will not leave you alone, so why don't you join us and end this suffering?" I remained silent and did not respond to him. He continued to speak and said, "Believe me, the matter is easy and does not require much of you. I can give you powers, authority, and immunity, and give you knowledge and wisdom that will make you prevail and immortal. What I am offering you is something that many have sought to attain, but few have attained, and I have chosen you to be among that chosen group." So I spoke for you for the first time, and I was still hugging myself from the fear and cold that had suddenly descended on the place. And I said, "Who are you to give me all that?" He said, "I am the other side of the coin." I said to him, "What currency?" He said, "The coin that was tossed in the air on the day you were born and will land on the ground on the day of your death." I said, "What is the return?" The owner of the voice laughed and said, "There is no return, son of Adam." I told him, "Nothing comes for free." He said, "You are right." The voice was silent for a while, then he said, "What do you think is the appropriate return for everything I have offered you?" I told him, "I don't know." He said, "What do you have?" I told him, "I don't have anything worth exchanging." He said, "Quite the opposite. You have many things, but you do not have the ease to see these things." I said to him, while I was shivering from the cold that was beginning to increase, "And what do you want me to give you?" He said, "Promise." I said to him, "A promise of what?" He said, "A promise to remain as you are and not to change." I told him, "I don't understand what you mean." He said, "It is not necessary for you to understand, son of Adam, but make this promise, and this nightmare will end. You see it." I said to him, "Why are you talking in the dark?" Hey, Sky, why don't you go out so I can see you and talk to you? He said, today is not the day of my departure, son of Adam, and you may not see that day. And I did not understand his words. So I remained silent. Then he said to me, my life is dedicated to you, and I am committed to my promise as much as I can. So I said to him, why don't you kill me and end the problem? He said, my goal is not to kill you, but to show you the way to kill yourselves. So I said to him, why do you speak in the plural? Who exactly are you talking about? He laughed and said, about all of you. I did not understand what he said and remained silent again. The cold in the place became so intense that I could not breathe easily. But my fear made me stay where I was, and after a while the voice came back and spoke to me and said, do you know what hell is? I said to him, do you mean hell? He said, no, I mean hell on earth, I told him. No, I don't want. Hurrah! I know, he said, to be restricted by laws and control. No rules that prevent you from moving freely. I told him, there is no absolute freedom. And if it does exist, it is another concept of chaos. He said, what's the fun in linking yourself to a belief or principle? Why don't you enjoy your life before you leave this world? I said to him, why you? Interested in this degree? My pleasure may be in adhering to my principles, values, and belief. Your insistence on changing that raises suspicion. He said, I am not interested in changing you. I want to develop you and elevate you above your limited human capabilities. No one has ever regretted accepting my offer. I said to him, do you believe in freedom of choice? He said, yes, and this is what I am trying to give you. I said to him, I choose not to accept your offer. Can you respect that? The voice that was speaking to me fell silent for a while, and then said, would you choose slavery and remain a prisoner of your belief? I said to him, we are all slaves and there are no free people, but some of us chose to be slaves to our lusts and desires, and others chose to be slaves of God alone. I heard a sound like a light growl. Then the voice spoke again and said, I am not anyone's slave. I said, indeed, you are a prisoner. He said, a prisoner? So I said, yes, I am a prisoner in your place, a prisoner of your goals and beliefs, a prisoner of those who occupied your mind. You do not have the freedom to return to your previous self, so you rush towards the abyss that you dug for yourself and want to take with you everyone in your path. He said, who are you talking about? I said to him, about all of you. He said, do you know who I am, so that you can talk about me? I said, my speech is directed to your thoughts and beliefs, regardless of your person, appearance, or identity. Oh, he said, go back to where you came from, son of Adam. I said to him, how do I return? He said, go upstairs and get out now, and you will see a tree with fruits. If you eat from it, your nightmare will end, and you will get everything I promised you. If you do not eat from it, you will return to your world empty-handed, but in both cases, you will return. I told him, as I was about to stand up with my arms, hugging my chest from the cold. Can I ask a question? He said, ask. I said, what's your name? He said, I have many names. I said, choose one of them and tell me. He said, audible. I left that place, started the place, and found the tree in front of me with fruits on it, as the owner of the voice told me, and my desire was great to eat from it, to satisfy my hunger, not to get what he promised. So I did not leave immediately and sat under it thinking, should I eat from it and satisfy my hunger, or should I leave it and return to the distant shore? After a short thought before my strength gave out, I decided to ignore the tree and return to the beach without eating those fruits.
Ita!
The journey back to the beach was arduous, and I fell during it more than once. After not a short time, I reached the beach in a miserable state, threw myself on the sand, and fell into a slumber that I thought was my last. I opened my eyes when the sun was getting hot on them, and I didn't have the strength to move. Oh, but I saw on that beach, which was only a few meters away from me, a man in elegant clothes, playing and running with some children. When the man saw that I had woken up, he slapped his palms together and laughed and said to the children who were with him, "He's finally awake." The children ran towards me, laughing, but when they approached me, I was terrified by their appearance, but I was not able to get up to escape. The children had no eyes or noses and looked very ugly. The children placed their small hands on different parts of my body and began to shake it while laughing. Only the elegant man separated them and kept them away from me when he said, "Playtime is over, children. Go back inside." The children left as the elegant man ordered them to do, and I could not see where they had gone because I was so tired and exhausted. All I heard were their steps and laughter as they walked away from me and the beach towards the center of the island. The elegant man sat next to me, opened something resembling a small bottle, and poured its contents into my mouth. Within moments, I regained my health and was soon able to get up next to him. I sat silently, waiting for this elegant man to speak, but he did not speak, and contented himself with looking at the clashing waves and hearing their strong voice, which was only crowded out by the sounds of the island's birds. The man broke his silence after about a quarter of an hour and said, "No matter what we do, we will not agree. So you will find us in constant conflict. My task in the past was arduous, but today many of you are acting on my behalf to do it." He was silent for a while, then smiled and said, "Some of you almost surpassed me to the point that I feared for my position." The man continued his speech after he turned to me and said, "You have successfully passed the test, and it is time for you to leave," I said to him. "What test are you talking about?" The man looked back at the horizon and said, "It doesn't matter now. The important thing is that you passed it, and now it's time for you to go back to where you came from." But I have a simple request," I said to him. "What do you want?" He said something that I did not understand much of, but I think I understood its entirety. He said, "Our world may seem wild and chaotic to you, but it runs in a precise order, with a clear goal, and for a fixed term. We must all walk according to this line, drawn for us and between us, and you have crossed this line against your will, and so have we, and the time has come for things to return to normal, and this time you will not have a choice in accepting or rejecting." Then he turned his head towards me again, smiling, and said, "Please don't force me to force you." I said to him, "I don't think I have the right to refuse." The elegant man laughed, then rose to his feet, shook the beach dust off his clothes, extended his hand while smiling, and said, "Come on, get up so as not to be late, son of Adam." I took his hand, and he pulled me up and said, "Follow me." The man walked along the coast, and I walked behind him until we reached a large rock, half of which was on land and half in the sea. He asked me to climb on it, so I did. The man called the children who were with him from the center of the island and said, "Come on, children, it's time to leave." The hideous children, 6 in number, came out of the forest and gathered around him, laughing and jumping. In a moment, the man raised his arm to the sky and began muttering, and the children turned into huge demons, even more hideous than their forms when they were children, except for one of them, who turned into a man in human form. The elegant man whispered in the ear of the child who turned into a man, and that man nodded his head in agreement. Then he rode on the back of one of the 5 giants, who in turn carried me with his huge hand and placed me on his back next to that man. And within seconds, how we were all flying in the sky. We flew away from the island and the elegant man, leaving him waving his hand from above, the coast of the island smiling. My journey on the back of the giant with the unknown man. We were flying over a wide sea, and the giant who carried me with the man was in the middle of the 4 other giants. I was astonished by this sight, the likes of which I had never seen in my life. The man approached me, and I looked down in an attempt to comprehend what was happening. He extended his hand to shake my hand and introduced himself and said, "I'm Crimson." I shook his hand, but did not speak to him. The man smiled and then continued his conversation with me by narrating some random events, which I think he wanted to tell me for a specific purpose before we arrived at our destination. He said, "When Jassar came to the island and begged my father to keep you on it, my father did not refuse his request because Jassar provided us with many services and made sacrifices to our kingdom that will never be forgotten. So my father agreed on the condition that you do not enter the middle of the island. Jassar agreed to that condition, but when I betrayed Jund with Jassar, who was under my father's protection, my father decided to remove Jund from the map of the devils, especially after presenting the head of Jassar as a token of truce to Deshar and his group of fellow believers. In addition to her slandering the 7 peers who pledged loyalty to you, which prompted Dashar cooperated with Jund to kill them all. Silent Crimson. A little while, then he said, "Ask what you want, for I see a lot of questions running through your eyes, Holden. How did Jassar's followers betray their leader so easily?" He said, "The army was divided into 2 parts after the killing of Jassar. 1/3 of them were with him and opposed to the coup that occurred, and 2/3 were with Jund, because the devils follow the strongest, and the principle of loyalty is not one of their priorities or concerns. They are more like mercenaries and follow whoever wins." I told him, "Was there a war between the 2 sides?" He said, "Yes, and Dashar participated with Jund in his army, and thus gave the upper hand to Jund in crushing its opponents." I said to him, "Has Dashar forgotten his revenge on me?" He smiled and said, "Jund killed Dashar moments after her overwhelming victory over her brother's allies and subjugated his army by force after he escaped from him unharmed." I was silent for a while. Then I said, "Where are we going now?" He smiled and said, "To bring the head of Arcton soldier to my father and to return you to your homeland safely." I looked at him in surprise and said to him, "Quite simply," he said, with a smile still on his face, "You don't know my father when he gets a little upset." I was silent for a while. Then I said, "Who is your father?" He interrupted me and said, "We have arrived." So I stood with him and saw the Atlas Mountains on the horizon, and I saw the man indicating to the 4 giants to head towards the cave in which there was the throne of Jund. "This journey is from that devil. The giant who was carrying us descended near the cave in which was the throne of the kingdom of Dunes, and the 4 giants went and stood next to the cave." Then Crimson pointed to me, smiling, saying, "Let's go in and get this over with quickly." I entered the cave with him, and Jund was sitting on the throne with a group of her strong guards around her. When she saw me, she screamed so hard that the cave shook for her, and she said, "Kill that bastard blogger now!" The guards rushed towards me with terrible speed, but they did not manage to touch a hair of mine because, with a movement of his finger, Crims toppled all of their heads at once. Jund looked at Kurmus with anger and contempt as she said, "Who are you, you bastard, and how dare you come in here?" During Jund's conversation, Kurmus was examining the place, turning his back to her, looking at me, smiling, and saying, "I thought the place was more luxurious than that." So Jund shouted and said, "Don't you know who I am and whose daughter I am?" Crimson turned towards her. The smile disappeared from his face. And he said in a calm but strict tone, "Rather, you are the one who does not know who I am and who's a son." In an instant, Jund caught fire and turned to ashes. The smile returned to Crimson's face, and I was about to faint from the horror of what I saw. He approached me, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, "It's time to leave. Fear." I said to him calmly, "Is my nightmare over?" He said while smiling, "Is there anyone left who wants to harm you?" I said while looking at Jund's ashes, "I don't think so." Crimson laughed lightly and said, "So let's get the booklet out of this place." We came out of the cave, and every tribe, the Dunes, was gathered. So Crimson addressed them while standing between the 5 giants and said, "Disperse, you Dunes. Our father has condemned you to become lower demons forever, and whoever has a title will be stripped of it." In an instant, without argument or the slightest resistance, all the demons and peers disappeared from Crimson's sight. Crimson said to me while riding that giant that brought us to the Atlas Mountains, "Do not tell Insia what happened to you, Fear. No one will believe you, but we will not prevent you from mentioning what happened because we are confident that people will ignore what you have to say." I said to him, "How do you know that they will ignore me?" He said, "You are not the first, and you certainly will not be the last." I said, "What exactly happened to me?" Crimson laughed loudly and said, "Goodbye, Fear. You will be in your bed after you sleep." Crimson left with the 5 giants, and I kept watching them until they disappeared from the horizon. I sat on the top of the mountain until I fell asleep and fell asleep. I woke up in my room. I did not get out of my bed. I had tears in my eyes. My lips smiled, and I said to myself, "Thank God